the earth pigments, or ochres. Well, this is a family of natural clay earth pigments which come in a variety of colours depending on their mineralogy. As you can see, the different colours are produced by varying amounts of 3 different minerals in the mix. They're all iron oxides: limonite, hematite and goethite. Smaller contaminants of ilmenite might add a different colour into the mix as well. So those are the minerals. If we remind ourselves what they look like a bit, all of them are weathering products, though hematite and goethite also occur as precipitates and form occasional ore bodies. Although listed in the table, not listed in the table, the streaks of these minerals are what are crucial. They give us the clues as to their possible uses as pigments. Hematite, of course, is one of the first things you learn when you go to any geology class, is that hematite has a cherry red streak. I can almost see you imagining the phrase in your brain. Goethite is brown and limonite is yellow. Limonite usually forms from the hydration of hematite and magnetite. It's usually slightly hydrated, and goethite usually forms at the oxidation zone in the soil and is associated with a change in state of iron cations from ferrous to ferric iron. So what were these used for? Well, one of the most classic and instantly recognizable uses of the hematite-based pigment red ochre is from the famous Le Chauvet cave in the Ardèche in southeastern France. This was discovered in 1994 and is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And the cave seems to have been occupied during Aurignacian and Gravettian times. That's late Paleolithic to early Mesolithic, if I remember rightly. And the famous artwork that adorns its wall is believed to be about 32,000 years old. And this is the famous handprint. The painter was probably left-handed, since the print is of the right hand laid on the rock wall. And the red ochre was mixed either with blood or saliva and probably spat over the hand using the hand as a stencil from a tube probably held in the mouth to yield this scarlet silhouette. In fact, the hand is not alone. There's a whole constellation of them that greeted the cavers when they first broke into the cave system. And indeed, this cave system contains over 400 handprints, as well as renderings of mammoths and other local fauna. And it's even been suggested that this might be part of a rendition of a volcanic eruption. Well, you could see the pyroclastics there. Whether that's truly volcanic or not, I wouldn't like to say. Red ochre might have been used by Homo erectus as much as 1.5 million years ago, and certainly by Neanderthal man 250,000 years ago. By 100,000 before Christ, ochre was being used widely, with the centres being set up to receive excavated ore for processing and subsequent trading. You may have come across this cave, Blombos Cave, found in the coastal cliffs 200 miles east of Cape Town in South Africa, discovered in 1991, and it records something of the fascinating details concerning the history of the use of red ochre. Amongst the remains there are 2 pallets made up of abalone shells for mixing the red ochre paint in. And there's a whole series of rocks which have got stripes like this of red ochre painted on them. You might argue that this is some of the earliest abstract art. And here we've got some with incised markings there, which were enhanced with hematite pigments as well. And at Lascaux, again, a place that some of you might have visited, we've got these a whole variety of animals illustrated in the Dordogne here. The cave contains nearly 6,000 figures with a whole host of different animals depicted in ochre colours. There's some more there. Ochre was the most commonly used pigment for painting walls in the ancient Mediterranean world. And on the right, we've got ochre paintings in the tomb of Nacht in ancient Egypt, dating from the 15th century BC. Yellow was associated with gold, which was considered to be an eternal and indestructible material. And the skin and bones of the gods were believed to be made of gold. So often the Egyptians would paint their gods in this gold, sort of yellowish ochre. And on the left, we got the fresco of a Roman villa still preserved under a covering of pyroclastic rocks before it was excavated from the eruption of Vesuvius, destroying Pompeii and Herculaneum, of course, famously in 79, was it 79 AD? Thereabouts, anyway. In classical antiquity, the finest red ochre came from the Greek colony in Cappadocia on the Black Sea, the site of the modern city of Sinop in Turkey. And it was carefully regulated, expensive, and marked by a special seal, and called, therefore, sealed Sinope. Later, the Latin and Italian name Sinopia was given to the wide range of dark red ochre pigments. And shaped into sticks with knives, hematite or red ochre chalks were used for drawing, sometimes to give an outline which would later be painted over. And natural red chalks with their rich, warm colours were popular from about 1500 to 1900. And artists such as Michelangelo, Rembrandt and Watteau used this medium to produce some of the most coveted drawings in the world today. But by the 18th century, synthetic red iron oxide pigments were being produced, so hematite and limonite and the others tended to go the way of all flesh. Perhaps one of the most famous earth pigments or ochres was sienna, from the Italian terra, de Siena, meaning the earth of Siena. It contains iron oxides and manganese oxides and is also referred to as terra rossa, or just red earth. Terra giallia is yellow earth, and in its natural state, it's got this sort of yellowish brown colour, and it's called raw sienna. But when you heat it, it becomes a reddish brown because of the loss of the volatiles, and it's called burnt sienna. So those are some of the names that we had from our childhood watercolour palettes before. And in fact, I received an email today from the National Gallery. They've got an exhibition coming up on sienna in the spring. Just to keep your eyes open. Well, in the Middle Ages, the sienna pigments were used by artists, especially local ones, like Duccio da Buonantenia and other painters who lived and worked in the area or in the Republic of Siena. Duccio was painting with earth pigments in the late 13th century until his death in the early 14th. And he was hired throughout his life to complete many important works in government and religious buildings around Italy. And his extensive use of siennas can be seen in those examples of his work. Well, Renaissance painters continued to use these earth pigments, and in 1299, the commune and people of Florence decided to build a palace that would be worthy of the city's importance and that would be more secure and defensible in times of turbulence. So the Palazzo Vecchio, or Old Town Hall, contains the Hall of the 500, the largest hall in Italy by volume, built in 1496 and later extended by Giorgio Vasari. The walls and the ceilings were covered in frescoes painted by Vasari and his various assistants. And these are dominated by the light tones of the earth pigments, including a range of ochres and terra rossa, and to very good effect. I think you must agree there. And in this particular self-portrait, Rembrandt used all of the earth pigments to produce an image which is rich in a series of brown colours. Yellow ochre was also a favourite pigment to use in order to produce a distinctive yellow that was used to represent the cowardice. And this cowardly yellow, as it was sometimes called, was specially used to depict the vestments of Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ, of course, for 30 pieces of silver, as is shown here. And unfortunately, not only is he wearing yellow, but he's got some sort of form of hydrocephalus. If you look at the shape of his skull, he's entirely unnatural. And it appears here with a much more normally proportioned skull in Holbein's image, Bondoni's image of the Kiss of Judah.